Hi everyone. So today, as part of the application for the internship at Ethereum, I will be submitting a technical explainer on the Ethereum virtual machine and how the Ethereum processes its transactions and maintains its global state. So to start things off, the Ethereum virtual machine is a decentralized engine which consists of a lot of nodes spread across the globe, and together they are responsible for processing all the transactions and the smart contracts and then updating the Ethereum blockchain state. So to basically put it together, Ethereum virtual machine is supposed to execute all the smart contracts, and then the Ethereum state is what tracks the account balances and the contracts and the contract data. Now, to understand how it does that, we have to understand the components of the EVM. The Ethereum virtual machine, all the nodes, they have a copy of the Ethereum state and they execute transactions on that state and then update the state, and then through consensus, the final state is evaluated. For each transaction, the components of the EVM are thus follows. So there's a stack, which is a last in first out structure. It has 1024 elements, and each element is a 256-bit word. 256 because that's most compatible with the hash functions that the Ethereum deploys. For every transaction, a byte addressable array memory is used, which of course is used during the transaction. And once the transaction is done, the memory is removed. For the contracts, for the storage of the contracts and the contract data and the account information and all of that, a persistent storage is tied to the contracts, and this is stored on the network chain itself, which would also mean that it has a certain cost associated to it. And then there's of course the gas meter, which tracks the computational cost of all the operations. So every transaction consists of bytecode operations, opcode operations, and each transaction has a certain gas cost associated to it. So when a transaction is happening, a certain cost is provided upfront, and certain incentivizing costs can also be provided. And then that cost multiplied by the operations that are happening gives the total gas cost for the account for that particular transaction. Now, to ask how does the EVM execute really? Basically, Ethereum virtual machine behaves as a state transition agent. So the Ethereum blockchain is in a certain state A with the accounts, and they have balances and there are contracts available. And then a certain transaction happens. So an accounts may exchange Ether coins, or new contracts might be created, or some contracts might be triggered. So those transactions happen and the state of the blockchain changes. So broadly, this is how the Ethereum virtual machine works on the Ethereum state. Now, of course, what is the Ethereum state then? So Ethereum state, or in fact, for any interpretation engine, a state basically is a data structure which holds all the variables, all the information, and then this information is changed through some rule-based operations, and then a new state is made. For the Ethereum, of course, the state is stored in the form of an enormous data structure called the modified Merkle-Patricia tree. Now, we will not go into the detail of this tree right now, but the broader idea is that it keeps all the accounts, the contracts, and all the information related to the execution there in the form of hashes, and it all the tree branches go back to the root, and the root hash is also stored on the blockchain. The good thing about this is that if somebody tries to tamper with the tree, the tamper with the root, the hashes cannot, of course, all be recreated based on the computation, and hence the safety of the chain is by and large maintained. Now, when we said that the state is made up of the accounts and the information on the contract, so what are Ethereum accounts? Ethereum account effectively is an entity which has some Ether balance. These accounts, of course, can participate in transactions, they can interact with other contracts, and they can do other activities. They are the agents of the activities that happen on the Ethereum blockchain. So of course, there are two types of accounts there. One is the externally owned account, which is owned by certain users. They have their public and private keys, and through that, they establish agency and control on the transactions. Then there is the contract account. So the contract account is basically code deployed on the network. This Both of these accounts here can receive, they can hold, and they can send Ether coins, and they can send tokens, and they of course can interact with other deployed contracts as well. A slight bit of difference between these is that an externally owned account, it costs nothing to create them. It can initiate transactions, and these transactions can be only done through Ether and Ether coins and token transfers. And they're paid off. They have this public private key so that the user of the account can establish ownership of the account, and they can use that as a proof of ownership. A contract account has a certain cost associated with it, because you're creating the account and there's code that has to be stored on the network, and there's data that's stored with the network. So that has an initial cost itself. It can only send transactions in response to a trigger. So it only when it receives a trigger will the contract start its execution and then affect the state of the blockchain. Now, contract accounts also don't have private keys because they're only controlled by the logic of the smart contract. So these contracts are immutable. So once made, they are on the state, they will not change. In fact, Ethereum has had problems where certain contracts were made and then the state would not change. And a lot of that history went into creating what's called the Ethereum Classic. That is something we will come to later. But yeah, to bring it together, Ethereum virtual machine, it processes transaction and updates the Ethereum state. And the state, of course, is a large data structure, in this case, a Patricia Merkle drive, which keeps account of all the accounts and their balances and the contracts that are present in the Ethereum blockchain. And together, of course, they can power the decentralized applications that we see so spreading around us. So yeah, thank you very much for this attempt, and this will wrap up my explainer.